Although we may complain about how difficult our lives are today, it certainly isn't as terrible as waddling in your own ways for days on end while also trying to survive against gunshots, diseases, and poisonous gas on a daily basis. Hello, I am Jayanne, and today I'm going to inform you about the major effects of serving in the trenches during the First World War by discussing the living conditions, the industrial impact on weaponry, and shell shock. Living in the trenches faced many hardships and struggles. It was dangerous to serve in the trench warfare, and one of the reasons why was the living conditions in the trenches. They lived in these deep ditches or stretched out holes in the ground that they continuously had to work in order to stabilize, because it was their most important line of defense. Even during harsh conditions, they had to make sure that their base was strong. J. Morrow wrote a novel called The Great War in Imperial History that stated, "Soldiers continually improved these trenches or dug new ones. Around Ypres in January, British troops had to drain their low-lying trenches, build, fortify, and fix barbed wire belts, the length of it all while dodging German snipers." Throughout their years in battle, one of the worst days that they had to face was when it would rain. In Morrow's words, "Beyond these man-made demands, rain, and more rain sometimes flooded sections of the trench line. Without a roof over their heads, the constant raining wasn't only annoying to live with, but also flooded where they ate, slept, and fought. Hundreds of thousands of young soldiers died throughout the battle, and it was impossible to give each of them their own proper burial or to move everybody away from the rest of where the soldiers stayed. Instead, those dead soldiers ended up piling up across those trenches." J. Morrow also stated that their bloated, putrefying bodies and the hundreds of thousands left to rot in the mounds in the sun because there was too many to bury unleashed their own horrid stench. They would stenchionally multiply in numbers, causing those living conditions for the ones who survived to only worsen. Soldiers' living conditions in the trenches were very different from the safety of their own homes. Living in those unsanitary and unhygienic conditions caused the soldiers to become vulnerable to nature's forces. As stated from the Great War in Imperial History, all frontline soldiers lived, like the rats and other vermin that shared the positions with them, in a muddy maze of trenches. Pests, such as rats, were not only terrible roommates, but also caused difficult complications like gun wounds, including infections and diseases. Not only were soldiers vulnerable to inhabitable conditions, they were also exposed to a new era of weaponry in war. Industrialization brought a heavy impact on World War I in the battlefield, one of which was the use of poison gas. A soldier had shared their experience from the novel Personal Perspectives World War I, saying, "A great wall of green gas, about 15 to 20 feet high, was on top of us. Captain McLaurin gave an order to get handkerchiefs, soak them, and tie them around our mouths and noses. It made them powerless against it because of their lack of knowledge or materials in order to protect themselves against it, because simple gas masks back then were not enough. Soldiers also had to face frequent bombings that destroyed trenches and killed their fellow soldiers. Either side of the war would choose specific times throughout the weeks to bomb their opposing side." A soldier from Personal Perspectives World War I also stated that, "For about 7 hours, they shelled us most unmercifully, the shells dropping all around, some hitting the parapet, others just going over, causing a great many casualties." Tactics like this would go on for hours, and when they wouldn't, you would have to spend hours waiting an alert in case the opposing side chose to bomb yours instead. Because of the newer deadly weapons, it led to the traumatic effects of shell shock. Shell shock was before its time, when the only injuries people knew were the ones on your skin. They first believed it was caused by the shards of the bomb shells that would explode and implant tiny shreds of the bomb into a soldier's brain. But this was only a theory to reason with why veterans and soldiers during the war acted in these unnatural ways. It left a permanent scar for the veterans of World War I that is currently known as post-traumatic stress disorder. From the article Shell Shock Trauma and the First World War, The Making of Diagnosis and Its Histories, Lurin stated that during the First World War, thousands of soldiers were treated for shell shock, a condition which encompassed a range of physical and psychological symptoms. Soldiers would act confused, have nightmares, and possibly also have trouble speaking or hearing. When doctors couldn't figure out why soldiers acted in these unnatural ways, they were automatically diagnosed with shell shock. Meredith Dunlop wrote how these negative assumptions about the roots of shell shock led to these soldiers suffering from the disorder to feel this sense of shame. Soldiers tried to hide their trauma because it was misinterpreted as being weak and cowardice. As stated in this article regarding the results of shell shock, over 150 soldiers were executed by the British Army for displaying cowardice whilst in the grip of illness. This shows how vulnerable these soldiers were to the war even after it ended, and it followed them to the grave, whether they survived the endless battles on the field or not. As you now understand, living in the trenches was not only difficult to survive, but also mentally hard to get through. Whether or not you still believe your life is more tough, at least now you know a little bit more about the difficult life of soldiers in the history of World War I. Thank you.